Oh yeah, we're good to go. So, hi everybody. Very often I bring people on who I really, really like, and sometimes I have to stop and tell you about the person because they're very, very unusual. So, Rick and I met through really, for me, it was like probably through Stacy Tuschel, who had invited me to that call, and he reached out and said, "Hey, I just want to let you know it was lovely to meet you. And if I can ever support you anyway, I'd be happy to." I'm like, "What? Nobody does that." So then I actually had a question. And he kept taking time to be like, "No, but seriously, let me help." Or how can I? And I was like, "Nobody does this, really and truly. So thank you for being that person in the world. You're
Which
so,
is sad, right?
yeah, it
I
is.
think.
It is."
I mean, yeah, it's just like, why not try to help people that you think are pretty cool, right? Like,
Well,
it doesn't have to be hard, you
Well,
know?
you're pretty cool. And the thing is that I saw you speak at Social Media Marketing Worldwide a few years ago on like the big stage. And
Mhm.
so I was actually surprised that you were as generous and sweet and down to earth and humble and keep filling in the blanks with all those nice words because you're one of those cool people who sits at the cool table. And turns out you're still the same person who cares.
Yeah. And that's part of this, right? It's just like, and that's something that I've always kind of carried is like, because like when people, if I go to like social media marketing world, for example, and people come up and like take a picture, I'm always like, it's just me, right? It's just me. But I'm always, I'm always honored and grateful for those types of opportunities. So yeah,
Well, I'm so happy that you're here. So, what we're going to do today, if it's okay with you, I have a bunch of questions for you that I know that they would want to ask you in terms of
totally.
like, how do we really find momentum building our business, right? And how do we build a
Yep.
business in general? And how do we build a business online? And how do we start to understand traffic and how we can do it in a sincere way and all of that? But before we go into that, I thought it would be really cool to hear your story a little bit and to
Yeah.
understand like how you went from being a guy who had an idea to a person who was executing on those ideas and starting to see
Yeah.
things really expand in a way that probably was like, wow, I can't believe that this is here, that this is possible. So talk
Yeah.
us through that journey a little bit before we get into some of the wisdom you've extracted from it.
Yeah. So I, like so many people here, like I was in the corporate world. I was in corporate online advertising for 13 years and working for big brands. I started out at AOL on the East Coast, worked there for 5 years. Then I moved out here to the West Coast, um, worked for Yahoo for a couple of years, worked for Funny or Die, which is Will Ferrell's platform, worked for another platform. And it was all I was selling online advertising. And so I've sold, you name it, I worked with it, video, text links, search, banner ads back when they were like super basic. So I did all that stuff for a long time and working with these big brands. And I had clients who were the big brands as well. And so I just kind of, I don't know why, but I always had that entrepreneurial kind of push. And I think it's because of I don't like to be told what to do. And so I was like, I want to do my own thing. And so about 10 years ago, 2010, I started thinking about, you know what, I'm kind of done with this corporate world. Nothing wrong with it. I just wasn't enjoying it. And the funny thing is, I was making a lot of money in the corporate world, is making a few $100,000 a year, but I still wasn't happy. I was like, I don't want to be, I was having to basically kiss the butts of people
Right.
who I didn't want to be having to do that in order for me to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so it just didn't align with me. And so then in 2010, I found this guy online who had this website and he had it online and he was making money from selling these little products. I reached out to him, asked him if he would like teach me what he was doing. And so yeah, that was my first coach 10 almost, yeah, almost 11 years ago, charging me $500 a month. And then it was like, all right, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, I don't know. I just don't want to do what I'm doing right now. And then he said, well, if you could help me right now in my business, what would that look like? And I said, well, advertising, because that was my background, right? But then we just kind of dialed it in. He said, well, what about Facebook ads? Because advertising, Facebook ads, and the ability to build a community on Facebook. This is back in the glory days where like you build a community, you post on your page, and people actually see it.
Right.
Right. So long story short is I was like, all right, I'm going to go in on that. I started teaching myself ads, etc. And then I ended up leaving the corporate world in, not that I know the date or time or anything like that, but September 30th, 2012. It was a Friday and I was out of there. But here's the thing. I told myself that I needed to, number one, I needed to get out of debt before making that jump. And I was $70,000 in debt. And the second thing is I wanted to have a safety net, basically. And I pulled the number out of like, all right, I want $100,000 in the bank and be out of debt, and then I'll leave corporate. And I was able to achieve that, thankfully. And then I left, and I was like, holy cow, what the heck am I doing? And so fast forward, over the years, I have really started to gain steam in 2014, January 2014, started doing webinars. I was teaching Facebook ads. I had Facebook ads. I launched with a Facebook ads online course. And then I made the mistake of serving online businesses. Then it was like, oh, you should serve local businesses. Okay, cool. Local businesses. Then it was like, you should serve ad managers. Okay, cool. Shiny object. I'm sure no one here can relate to that, right? And so I started chasing it all. And before I knew, I had 5 different offers and I was like, I was making good money. I was very fortunate and very thankful to hit 7 figures in 4 years. However, I will say this. It came at the expense of my relationships, came at the expense of my relationship with she was my wife then, with my wife. And it came at the expense of, I think, most importantly, my health, both physical and emotional. And this could be a whole other conversation. I got really low, very dark place. I don't want to do this anymore. And I mean, like, do all of this anymore. So something needed to change. And so that's when I started to like, you know what, 7 figures isn't worth it if this is what I have to do it. And by the way, and this is a big thing I coach in with my students, is like 7 figures is just a number, right? Like that number for me back then was like, I've made it, or I'm successful at 7 figures. So like, that's so ironic, right? It's like, really? Like what, if you're not making whatever, 40, 50K a year, that's not successful? No, that is, right? And success is different for everybody. And so anyway, since 2017, I've really been working. That was all right, things need to change. This does not have to be, success needs to be defined by me. And I don't want to be chasing somebody else's, what success looks like to them. And then, so that was like starting the evolution of, okay, how do I continue to scale the business while working less and having more of a life, and taking care of myself? And then I think it was the next year, 2018, I started to see in my more closer coaching programs where people were coming with what they thought were Facebook ad problems, meaning I'm running ads to this lead magnet, but no one's opting in. No, it's not working, or my costs are way too high. Fix my ads. And it was 9 times out of 10, it wasn't the ads. And it's one thing we're going to talk about here today. They didn't understand the foundational marketing stuff, meaning they didn't understand their perfect customer. They didn't understand truly like what their pain points are, what their challenges are. They didn't understand how they were uniquely helping them. And so it was hardly ever an ads problem. It was way more of like, you're not solving the problem that they are telling you that they have. And so that was, and I loved talking about that stuff. Like I've been teaching ads for so long, I could teach ads to anybody, and I love to do it. I also love teaching mindset. I love teaching systems and processes. I love teaching like, how do we do all this? How do we have an amazing business that is successful for whatever success looks like to you, and doing it while working less? And then of course, things even evolved even more when my daughter was born 2 years ago. I have a 2-year-old daughter named Maya. And then that shifted even more so, meaning like, I want to work even less while continuing to grow the business. And so that's really what I do in the business, where I coach online course creators and coaches how to scale their business while working less. And we focus on basically the 3 key areas that I just mentioned. Mindset, number one, because as I always say, mindset is 80% of the success of our online business. Then it's the sales and marketing, ads, where everyone gravitates towards, like the sexy stuff, like landing pages and ads and funnels and all that fun stuff. Then we get into systems and processes, right? So how do we create more freedom based on what we're doing, and so that we can remove more of ourselves from the business while it's still growing, and just have an amazing experience within the overall business, so that you can have, I call it the optimized CEO, so that you have this amazing business, but yet you're building your business around your life, not the other way around. So that was a 15-minute story of the evolution of where I'm at.
I loved every second of it.
Thank you.
Type a 1 in the chat if you love this man right now. This is the thing. I really hope that I can hold space for you to see this right now, which I'm sure you've heard this before, but it's very genuine in this moment for you to hear that. I'm not surprised at all that you're consistently as successful as you are, because that story had so much heart and vulnerability in it. And that is so rare. And you are so genuine. And boy, are you abundant. Like, I love that at every level, you're like, hang on. There's an even more expansive way to show up for this life. Yeah. Hang on. This can be even more abundant than so many people would have gotten to that place. And that's part of why your soul was in pain, because you're like, if this is getting to the castle and this is all there is, this sucks. And then you were able to see beyond that, which is so massive, because your ability to be as grounded and open as you just were, and the fact that you then kept going in that story, you're already taking so many people with you to have real success and a better quality of life. I'm literally so engrossed and blown away. And I mean, I've done 400 of these. So I mean, it's saying a lot. You're awesome. Wow. Are you guys like fired up? I'm totally fired up. Wow. So
if I can add one more thing to that.
Please
Kelly,
add one more thing.
Or Kathy, I just looked at, I don't know why, I combined your first name and last name.
You can call me anything. And I have no ego around this ever. People are always like, I'm so sorry. I'm like, for what reason? Call me anything. Call me Heather, Lindsay. I look like a Lindsay. I could be a Lindsay. I could be anything.
You do kind of look like a Lindsay.
It's the freckles. Yeah.
Yeah. The interesting thing that happened, so 2 different things. Number one is, after hitting the 7 figures after 4 years, number one, I hit it. And then, this is going to sound really weird, but shortly after that, I was like, I mean, don't get me wrong, I was super grateful. I loved it. But then right after that, I was like, okay, now what? And it's like, that comes from just having some arbitrary number that you're going after, right?
Right. The
second thing was that, and I didn't realize this until about 2 years ago, but I was noticing that my revenue had kind of dropped a little bit after that achieving that goal, and it kind of leveled off there. And so through a lot of work, what I realized was that my subconscious was telling me that in order for you to have that kind of success, you have to go through all those things.
Of course.
in order to do it. And so I was like, my subconscious was sabotaging the growth because it was saying like, you have to suffer, your health has to suffer, et cetera. And so once I get clear on that, and then I really, I don't know, it's kind of like, I see like the expansion you're talking about, Kathy, and I see it I have two monitors, I'm looking at the chat box. And the expansion, I think, really went to a whole new level after I got clear on the whole revenue goal and why I'm doing what I'm doing. Because I'll be honest, at first it was like, I just want to make a whole lot of money, right? Like that was it. But then again, I did it. And then it was like, okay, now what? And what I started to see was, I'll never forget, I was sitting I grew up in small town, New Hampshire. Anybody from New Hampshire here? I grew up in small town, New Hampshire.
Love New Hampshire so much. Yeah.
And very, blue collar family. Jennifer's in Hopkins. Or we have some New Hampshire people here. I love it. I grew up in Hampton, right on the coast. And very blue collar. My dad was an auto mechanic. My mom was a children's librarian. And, the whole money doesn't grow on trees, lack mindset, rich people are evil. Ooh, that BMW driver, like whatever, I went through all that, just like so many of us. And so anyway, I'll never forget, I was sitting in my living room where I grew up, and my mom still lives there. I'll never forget, I saw my dad come in from work where he was an auto mechanic, and he was all hunched over, and he was carrying his little lunchbox that he took to work every day. And he was literally in physical pain from his work, right? Like from being hunched over cars all day.
Yeah.
And I saw that pain, and I saw that time and time again. My dad was diagnosed with colon cancer when I was 25. He was 45. And over the next 10 years, he fought colon cancer. He passed away when I was when I was in 1997. So he was 55 years old, and I'm sorry, I was 15. He passed away when I was 25, and literally, the stress from his job shortened his life.
That is so sad.
And so it was that, like realizing that, I'm like, that's my why right there. It took all those years in order to realize that, and it was, I don't want other people to go through that. If I can have any kind of impact on people and show them that, because my whole goal right now is to do this, is to show other people that money, like it's abundant, you can have a big impact, you can make a lot of money. It doesn't require you to work, 16 hours a day and all this other stuff, that you can have this balance and you can be an example for your kids. Like my whole thing, she's literally outside my window right now on the patio there. I want to be an example to her that this is possible, right? And so that's where my whole why comes in and why I do what I do.
It's amazing. And as you were saying it, we spend so much time in this program talking about resistance, and so many of us have had this belief that in order to make money, in order to receive love, in order to earn anything, we have to leave it all on the table. So part of us feels like, I'm not going to kill myself, because in order to make that much, I would literally have to die. I'd have to walk on my knees, as Mary Oliver says, for 1,000 miles in the desert. That's the only way, as if that's the way that it works. And so often now in my peer group, I see people who've had to go through that dark night of the soul, but then found a whole other way of living this life. And we were talking about it earlier today. We had our implementation call, and we were talking about how people believe that when they create abundance for themselves, they took something from someone else. But really, the more abundance you create, you just created more expansion in the world. You have more money to put back into the world. You can hire more people. You can be a stand for other people to do this thing. Like, it actually just creates more for you to have. And so it's amazing. And I want to go into, because I'm like already, like I'm sitting here and I'm like, I'm gonna text Rick and see if I can get in his coaching program. I'm like so moved by your because again, you have to say the right message to the right person.
Yeah. Yeah.
And your message is unique. Like a lot of people will say, like, I'm gonna teach you how to make money, but when you're like, no, 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 I'm gonna teach you how to make money and have a life. And
Yeah.
so you don't live to work, right? You have
Yeah.
work and then you really live. So can we talk
Yeah.
about how the hell have you learned that we can actually do that? What are some of the steps that make that possible?
Yeah. And like I said, I had to go through things to like the crap, if you will, to get there, to figure out how to do that. But like we've been talking about here, the foundation is the mindset part, right? Like we have to believe that, because when I started out, I was the with the very common, like, who the heck am I to do this? Who am I to teach Facebook ads? No one knows who I am. I didn't have an email list. I didn't have a platform. I had a podcast back then, but it was completely irrelevant to Facebook ads. And so I didn't have anything. I was starting literally with nothing in the online space. And I was like, there's the Mari Smiths and the Amy Porterfields and like people who literally wrote, Facebook Marketing for Dummies book out there. And I'm like, who am I to be doing this stuff? So I had to get over that, number one, and realize, like, who am I not to be doing it? Right. And then I'll never forget, I had a conversation with somebody very early on. Is like, how am I different? Like, how am I different from everybody else? And when you're first starting out, yeah, imposter syndrome, Bernadette said, absolutely. When I was starting out, this person said to me, and it was like so obvious, but we need other people to tell us these things, is like, well, you are you and you're unique in your you-ness, right? Like no one can take that from you. And so that's what I built on, basically. And I started to learn how to teach. And so once I get over that imposter syndrome, and by the way, all this mindset stuff, guys, like, it's not like, all right, April 30th, my mindset's good. I can move on. No, this is like, I've been doing this for a long time now, and I am always working on mindset for myself, right? It's a journey. And so it's not like, all right, I've reached that point where I'm totally good now, I can move on to the next thing. No, like we've been talking about expansion and stuff like that. You just expand to a new level, which our mindset, number one, helps us get there, but also introduces a new, like an evolution of the mindset in order to expand from there.
Yeah.
And so the other thing with that is, and it's talking about like the foundational stuff, yeah, right? I see so often that the people that have the biggest problem starting to grow their business is that they don't truly understand their perfect customers. And, and so the whole ICA, the ideal customer avatar, gets thrown around all the time. I actually want to challenge the traditional definition of do you guys talk about ICA?
We talk about figuring out who you're serving. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I want to take it a step further. And so ICA is generally somebody that we make up, right? So it's Kathy and, 35 years old and a couple kids and commutes to work for 25, like it's that sort of thing. But it's like a fictional person, if you will, or that we're just making up. Well, I want to challenge you to actually, like, who is this person based on what you actually know? Because for most of you, it's a previous version of yourself, right? You're helping somebody through your passion about where you once were. So now it's become really real. So we're not making anything up now. Now we look at, all right, what challenges were you going through? What pain points were you going through? Whatever it is that you're teaching. If you're teaching, give me a niche.
How to create a podcast.
How to create a podcast. All right. So if you're a current podcaster and you want to teach people how to create a podcast, think back to when you were trying to figure out how to create a podcast. And you're like, holy cow, I don't even know where to start. Right? Do I start with like setting things up? Like, what microphone do I get? What, all this other stuff. And so put yourself in that position. And now you can start to look at, oh, these are the challenges that I was having. These are the pain points I was having. This is why I wanted to do it so much. This is one of the impact, but I had no idea where to start. And you can start to look at what was my identity at that time. I was a what's the word I'm looking for? I'm blanking. Like a beginner or aspiring podcaster, right? So you can call that person like the aspiring podcaster, and then these are the things that excuse me, that I'm feeling, that I'm thinking. You know, if they super want to start a podcast, like what's keeping them up at night, right? And you can still name that person and an age range or whatever, which is helpful, but you got to get so much deeper than that. Yeah. And so then from there, okay, where are you trying to get people to? So if you're teaching people how to create a podcast, well, what's the result? What's the promise that you're helping them through your work, whether it's coaching or a course or whatever it is? Where are they trying to get to? Well, they're very likely trying to get to where you are right now. So again, you can tell them, you can create that identity of, I am a person who has a great podcast up on Apple Podcasts. I'm producing consistent content, et cetera, et cetera. Now we have a clear picture of who we are targeting and who we want to target, the problems that we can solve for them, and the whole gap from where they are now to where they want to get to. You help them cross that gap.
Yep.
Now you can get into like ads, for example, because you have that understanding. But most people say, and I love it, I mean, they're like, I just want to jump into ads and I want to like start setting things up. Okay, great. I love the enthusiasm, but we got to do the foundational work first. And it's not easy. It's a lot of work to do, which is why most people don't want to do it. And so we got to have that understanding first. How do we solve that problem? So, you know, how do we start building our audience? How do we start attracting those perfect customers? Well, like what's lead magnet, common term, what's something that we can create that can give our aspiring podcaster a really quick win? What if it were like a checklist of everything that an aspiring podcaster needs to do in order to get their podcast up on Apple Podcasts? Like one sheet, a checklist, like how that's a huge value for somebody. All they have to do is like go down the list, start checking the box. You want to give them a quick win, like they can start doing, they can consume in 15 to 20 minutes, and they can take the first action based on what you've just given them. Gone are the days of like a 42-page ebook or something like that, because what happens is we download it. Where does it go? It sits on our computer, you know? So that's really like talking about, that's the foundation first. And I mean, we can take this wherever you want to go.
It's Kathy, so good.
Like Valerie says, I want that list, please, for the podcast. It's spending our time. This is the biggest thing. Another huge thing I coach on is spending your time on the right, quote unquote, types of activities that's going to move your business forward. I just did an audit this morning for one of our accelerator members where he submitted 4 days. I have everybody do a time audit. Like, where are you spending your time? And he was spending, I think he had like 9 hours of over 4 days where he was editing video. And I was like, no, dude, no, you can hire somebody very inexpensively to edit your video, you know, and he teaches Christians how to start an online ministry, right? So that's his expertise. He needs to be out there creating, he has a podcast, creating content, like helping his existing customers, not creating or not editing video, you know? So it's, what are we focusing on?
So good. And I love it because everybody who's made to do this, we've kind of gone through this journey, right? Of like, Seth Godin, who's my mentor, he always says, Kath, it's radical empathy. You know, like, don't just make dinner for someone. Find out, are they vegan? Are they kosher? Are they gluten-free? Then you make the dinner, right? Like, who are you making it for? Like, let's make sure we know, and then we can hit that bullseye. And so they've gone through that process, and this is so essential. And so bringing it up to what you just said, that's perfect, because at least in Made to Do This, that's where people are now. But I asked this of Christy Wright. I said, what's the most important activity to go do? And she's like, get a client, right? Like, go serve somebody. Like, because what you said before, it's very often people will be like, oh, I'm working on my website and I'm writing, you know, more copy. And it's like, okay, wait a second, you know, where are you right now with serving a human and beta testing it and getting better at it and listening? So what do you think of that? Like when you say where to be spending your time for someone who's starting out, it's so scary, Rick. Like it's so scary to go and raise your hand, put your shingle out there. But how do we do that? And what are the things to do while we're doing it? How do we start to discern, okay, this is a good thing. It gives me a chance to practice. This is trash. This is treasure. How do we do that well, that process?
Somebody who is, you're like, so that, do you want to stay on the podcasting example? First of all, before I answer that, I love the whole concept of radical empathy. I love that so much. And to be honest with you, and unfortunately, like so many people, look, everybody, people are craving empathy right now. They're craving connection. They're craving authenticity in the current state of the world. This is what people want. But yet, like, you want to know what can separate you from everybody else? Just have radical empathy. As sad as that sounds, that will set you apart. The trick comes in where you are providing that radical empathy, but then provide that radical empathy at scale, meaning like, how do I help more people while still continue that level of radical empathy, you know? And so granted, that's a little bit down the road once you start to grow and expand. Now, yes, 100%. I literally had an answer to Instagram DM right before we get on from somebody. She went through one of my launches last year and went through another one shortly after that. And she asking a ton of questions, and nothing changed from launch number 1 to launch number 2. She didn't purchase the program at the time. She kept asking the same types of questions, okay? And here we are, literally 6 months later, and she DM'd me the exact same, she's in the exact same spot. And it was that question, what should I be doing? In what order should I be doing? And I'm like, oh my gosh, we've been having this question, or we had this conversation 6 months ago. Why are we still on that? And that was my answer, Kathy. It was like, you need to like stop overthinking it. You have a way to help people. You've got to get a customer. Like, that's it. And the easiest thing to do is to, just do coaching. Just do one-on-one coaching to start out. Most people want, and this is the other thing that people come to me, they're like, I want an evergreen. I want to turn this into evergreen. It's because people want to sit on the beach and have money raining down on them, right? We all do, right? But we got to get there first. And so it's do whatever you can do to get a customer. One of the easiest ways and it's not easy, I'm not saying that, but a simple strategy for doing that is go find Facebook groups where your audience, your perfect customers are hanging out. Now, what I'm not saying is go in there and start spamming them with like, hey, here's my schedule link. Here, I can help you. No, go in there and be an expert. Go in there and help people. Remember, radical empathy. Oh my God, that person is suffering with whatever that, challenge is. I can help them. This is not necessarily at that point like, hey, I'll DM you and take the conversation over here. You show up as an expert, help add value. I guarantee that is going to be noticed. And then people will DM you outside of that. You're not DMing them. They're reaching out to you. And then you can start to build that relationship. And I mean, people think like, I love that you brought up, Kathy, like the whole website thing. I had the worst website literally until November of last year. Like last year, my friends, the worst website ever.
Who cares?
And it is not important. It is not important.
Yeah. And what you're saying, what you're
Yeah.
saying is it's such a powerful tool. And Jasmine Star, who's a mutual
Yeah.
friend of ours, that's what she told me about when she started, is like she was doing photography, but then she would give people advice about Instagram. She's like, oh, you could do this, you could do that. And people were like, she's so nice and she's so helpful. And she's like, oh, is this a thing? Is this what people want me to do this? Like, and then she
Yeah.
just started doing more of it, right? It was just like
Yeah.
kind of organic because she was showing up, and that's honestly, that's how I would have wanted you to be here anyway, but it was you literally came to me and you're like, oh, how can I help? And you were genuine about it. And I was like, this guy is so sweet and so nice. Like I want to bring him on and help you and support you and shine a light on you.
And guys, this was not like, oh, how can Kathy help me? It's if somebody I'm a pretty quick judge of a person. And like, I can tell whether like I jive with that person basically. And like, I got that from like Kathy, like really quickly. And it's like, why not try to help? And so, the other thing too, on this sort of thing is the more that you can build relationships with people from a genuine, like, not like what you can do for me, like, this is what I can do for you. I'd love to help you with XYZ. Like, you're not doing something with a return in mind, like genuinely, authentically show up for people and reach out to them.
It's that in of itself, that could be a whole course, right? Like
totally.
Just finding ways James Altucher told me that. He's like, every day I make a list of 10 ways that somebody else could help their life, their business. I just have ideas for people. And he's like, and it's so fun and it's cool. It gets me in that sort of like idea thinking mode. And like speaking of Jasmine, I was just remembering like when she started her podcast, I knew how excited she was about it. And I knew that one of her dream guests was Seth Godin. So I said, I'm going to email him. So I emailed him and she's like, I can't believe you asked him to be on my show. And he wrote back, any friend of yours. She's like, what can I do for you? And I'm like, that's amazing. And I didn't need anything. I honestly didn't need anything, but it was like I was like, of course. And he'll love you. And she's so obsessed with him. So it was like such a great episode and he enjoyed it so much. And I was like, God, the power of like me going out of my way. It took 1 minute. It took 1 minute. And like, I haven't asked her, I don't have a favor to ask her for, but I've noticed that like, I'm constantly doing that because it feels good to do it. Abundance. And it's amazing. Like that in of itself can build your business. But in any case, yes, go get clients, go sit down, go offer free value right now, get there and give it away. So we haven't really talked about Facebook ads.
I know, I've been blabbing here.
No, you've been blabbing at all. It's been amazing. But we haven't really gone into it ever in Made to Do This, right? We've been doing this program many times and we've never really gotten into it. And I think it's because I don't want to overwhelm people. And I feel like, oh, what if people assume they have to spend 50 grand a month on Facebook ads or something like that? Yeah. But I do think that it is such an incredible tool. It's just so incredible. The fact that like so many human beings are on Instagram and Facebook. And so if we can learn that they're already segmented, they've already self-identified as having certain interests. And so we can sort of tap in and show up. So help us understand how to even begin to think about it. And what are some of the tools we need to build that?
Well, the little ninja thing that I've been doing is actually setting this conversation up, because how to start thinking about it is exactly what we've just been talking about. The foundational marketing principles, that is how we begin thinking about our Facebook and Instagram ads, right? And by the way, if any time I just say Facebook ads, I'm referring to both Facebook and Instagram. So before you even go into Ads Manager or Business Manager, you got to know your foundational marketing principles. All the stuff that we've been talking about is what you've got to understand first, right? Perfect customer, challenges and pain points. Then what you can do is you can do your targeting audience research, because that's the gold when it comes to Facebook and Instagram ads. Right. You can go into Facebook, and Facebook has a free tool called Audience Insights, and you can type in Seth Godin, for example, or podcasting or whatever it is, whatever topic. And then if it's an option, like it's either going to come up or it's not. But you put Seth Godin in, and it's going to give you a whole list of other interests that are related to Seth Godin. And you might be, because you might come up with, hopefully you got your list that you've already just brain dumped, like, oh, Seth Godin, like, all right, whatever, Tony Robbins and blah, blah, blah. But then you might come up with another name or another business or something else that's completely related to your topic that you're like, oh my God, that's a great one, right? So I call this data mining. And so it's like, all right, I'm going to put podcasting in, and then I'm going to get my list of things, the results that come up. I'm just going to, whatever you want to do, write them on a notebook, create a Google Doc, etc. And then I'm going to take one of those results. Let's just say we'll go back to the Tony Robbins because it's easy. Oh, okay, cool. Tony Robbins is a result, right? So I'm going to go back in, replace Seth Godin with Tony Robbins, now get Tony Robbins results. So now you get to, what we're doing here is we're just using this information to build a list of potential audiences that we can target on Facebook and Instagram. These are what we call the cold audiences, meaning if I target fans of Seth Godin, they don't know who I am, right? But if I target people who have been watching my videos, that's a warm audience because they're watching my videos. And that's a little bit more advanced, right? But the quickest thing, the easiest place to start is get building those audiences of people that are relevant to your audience. Okay. We talked about the lead magnet already, giving a quick win. Those are the things we have to start with. Okay. Now, before we get any further, we do have to at least mention, and it is advanced, it's technical, it's super nutty, but I have to mention it. Apple's new iOS privacy update. I talked to Facebook last week. They said their understanding is it's rolling out by the end of this month. So today is the 15th. 2 more weeks. Is that right? Yeah, 2 more weeks. We'll see. But for those of you guys who don't know, the next version of Apple's iOS, like 14.5, I think it is, they call it the App Tracking Transparency Framework, blah, blah. Basically, what's going to happen is people are you got a notification of it today, Jennifer says? Interesting. So Apple's going to pop up a box that says, I forget the wording, but like, do you want to allow Facebook to track your data or something, like whatever that is, right? Most people are going to say no, and they're like, no, I don't want this tracking. And so there's so many things that's going to affect. By the way, if you opt out of it, you're going to start getting crappy ads that are completely irrelevant to you. I'm going to be getting dog food ads and I don't even have a pet, right? But as an advertiser, this is a big deal. So Facebook has come out that we need to do a couple different things, right? So we need to what we call verify our domain, verify our website domain. And also we have to create and prioritize our 8 conversion events. I told you this was advanced. It's super, super weird. It is really weird, guys. Like I'm not a techie person, and I'm a Facebook ads person. And even me going through this, I was like, what are they talking about? And so I did 2 recent episodes, Kathy, on the podcast. We'll put them in the chat box or whatever.
Sure.
If people want to go listen, I outline all the steps you need to do. That's why I don't want to take the time. But you do have to know, if you're going to be advertising, you do need to be aware that this is upon us, right? Because it's going to do 2 things. It's going to affect the reporting of conversions, meaning like sending an ad over to our lead magnet page to opt in for our lead magnet, our podcasting checklist, if you will. We have to be able to track how many people are actually opting in on our, for our lead magnet. So that's the first thing. The other thing is how the Facebook algorithm essentially is optimizing, again, a little bit more technical, but it's a big deal. Like, it does affect us advertisers. So then we get into, once we've done that work, right? As I've been talking about, like, it is like we have to do the foundational work first, then we can start getting into creating our ads. Okay. And so then we want to, like, so the different ad types, everyone always wants to know, like, should I create an image ad? Should I do a video ad? Should I do this? Should I do that? And my answer is yes, always, because you got to test. It's the worst answer in the world. However, if you're just starting out with ads, I would literally create a couple different images in Canva, totally free. And I would also grab your phone, record some short videos on there. Again, speaking to aspiring podcaster in our example here, you know their challenges, you know their pain points. Hey, if you're thinking about starting a podcast and you have no idea where to start, I got you covered. I put together a 15-point checklist that all you have to do is follow step by step by step. Click this link here to download, and you can get started on your podcasting today. Like literally, I just made that up, and all I'm doing there is, excuse me, speaking to my target audience, my perfect customer. Everyone always wants to know, well, what should I say in my copy? Like, what would you say to somebody, like, if you're sitting down for coffee? I'm a total coffee snob, so I always use coffee as an example. I'm sitting down for coffee with my customer. What would I tell, like, what would I speak to them? Right? Like, this is, don't overthink the copy. Yes, there's, a little bit of, which I'll share in just a second, a little formula for it, but don't overthink it. And if you don't know the words that your target audience is using, for example, I'm going to kick you right back to the Facebook group or a Facebook group where your target customer is hanging out. Look at the language that they're using. If you're in the knitting space and you teach knitting, go find Facebook groups on knitting. There's probably a million of them. And what's the language that people are using? Use that language in your ads, in your landing page, in your emails, what have you. So image, video, and then ad copy, right? You want people to think, whether it's on video or in the copy, oh my God, they know me, like it's like they're in my head. They know me exactly, like they know me what's almost better than I do on understanding the problem, the frustration I'm having about creating a podcast, for example. That's what you want them thinking. But you can't do that until you go back to the foundational understanding your perfect customer. Okay. Simple formula for writing the copy. In addition to, like, it's as if you're sitting down for coffee with them. You want to start off with, some people call it a hook. Some people call it an angle. It's like, how am I getting their attention? Right. And then also, who are you speaking to? Now, what I'm not saying is, you don't have to say like aspiring podcasters, blah, 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 right? You're going to say, thinking about starting a podcast and have no idea where to start. All right. For my perfect customer, I just grab their attention because I'm speaking directly to them. Does that make sense, Gabby?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The other thing, when in that first couple of sentences, as we're catching their attention, you want to do this within the first 3 sentences. And the reason for that is because when you see the ad on mobile or on your desktop newsfeed, it's 3 sentences, then it kicks to that little more link, and then you got to went to the image or the video. So you've got 3 sentences to catch their attention. You want them to click that more button to read more of the copy. Here's a quick question. What do you think is more important when creating your ad, the image or the video, or the copy and the headline? What would you think? Or you can let me know in the copy, headline. Yeah, I see Joan, Alana say image. That's exactly right. The reason is we're scrolling through, right? You got to get them to stop. And you're going to do that by the biggest factor, the biggest element of the ad, which is the image or the video that you're creating. So catch their attention with the image or the video. And it's like, all right, catch their attention, then get them to read the copy. The headline is super important because it's the largest text of the ad. And it's kind of like, it's a psychology. I don't know what you call it, but it's almost like an order of thinking that people are processing seeing the ad. Catch their attention with the largest aspect, which is the image of the video, then they'll likely see the headline. Oh, okay, cool. I want to read more of this.
What's interesting is like, and I don't know if this, I'm curious your thoughts on it, but I always tend to find that when everybody zigs, I like to zag. And so what I've noticed is that I cringe when I see photos that are really curated, because I'm like, oh, someone's trying to sell me something. I'm out, you know?
Yep.
So what's worked for us is I'll use an image of me, like literally a picture I took of myself, like with my phone. And I'm like sitting there, like, you know, looking sincere, or like looking like myself. And people are like, do I know her? Did we go to high school together? Right. Like,
why do you think that works? Like, that's exactly, why do you think that works?
Because it's not, it's the opposite of what an ad usually is, which is like, this is my perfect headshot with the glamour. Like, I just don't. But have you advised your students in that way as well?
Yeah, it's, and I see Julie just said authentic rather than curated. Absolutely. What are the types of pictures or videos do people share on Facebook? I mean, Facebook for sure, and on Instagram. It's just authentic, natural, genuine pictures and video, right? Like, I love that you said, Kathy, like, if I see something super curated or like a stock image or like this perfectly edited video with all, like, you're just going to keep going because it's like, ding, 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 this is an ad. But, you know, some of my best ads, for example, that are videos are literally me holding my phone out in front of me, walking down the sidewalk with a coffee in my hand, just talking. Like those, it's because that type of content is native to the platform, native to Facebook, native to Instagram.
And what's also authentic, that's cool to hear you say that, because I actually didn't know what your answer was going to be. But the other thing about that is in the copy, whenever I've written ad copy, I literally pull out my phone, I go to the notes, I take a deep breath, and I just write my story. And why did it work when you sat down here today and within the first 8 minutes, everybody was like, oh, my heart just literally opened and I really like him? It was because you shared with us, you were like, well, here's the journey. And then it got to this point. And then when that happened, I was like, I was really kind of considering being done, like with everything, which is a really brave, really honest thing to say. And I'm going to throw this question to you. Now I feel like I'm leading the witness, but I really want to know what you would say. I have found for myself, one of our best converting ads, I literally wrote in the headline was like, 10 years ago, I was depressed, period. I pulled over to the side of a street, couldn't stop crying, like knew there was something more for me in my life, and really could not look at myself in the mirror, like didn't recognize myself, wanted a way out. And it was honest. Like that's, you know, honest for me. Would you say that that's how you advise? Because what I see a lot is like, hey, you want to make 6 figures? And I'm like, oh my God, no one talks like that. But then at the end, at the same time, the reason I'm genuinely asking is because you do want to be clear though, what the heck it is, right? Like it does need to be about the other person. And so over the years, I've kind of learned how to balance it all. So without giving away my big reveal, what would you say in terms of being authentic and maybe saying the kind of things that people wouldn't assume you should say or not?
Yeah, no, I love that you do that where you're like, take a deep breath, grab your phone and type out your story. Another thing that you can do that, just a slightly different angle or way to do that, grab your phone, click the record button and just record yourself speaking it out. And you can also, I use Drafts. That's a free app, it's an iOS app. So I can just speak into it and it transcribes what I'm saying right then and there, pull that into a Google Doc, and you can just start editing it for ad copy. Now it's Drafts. Good. Drafts. So once we've caught their attention authentically, not with like, hey, want to hit 7 figures in the next 2 weeks? Like, no, you catch their attention authentically. And then I like to call it like you're minding the gap, over in the UK, they're like, mind the gap, please mind the gap. So that's where you get into the story. You want to connect with them, right? So what you just said, Kathy, you're going to connect with and attract the people that you want to attract through that approach. The people that want that 6 figures or whatever. I mean, we all want that, right? But like the people that are like, yeah, 6 figures, you're going to repel those people. That's a good thing. We want to repel the people that we don't want, and we want to attract our people, if you will.
Yeah.
And so once we've caught attention, then we can get into like, understanding where they're at. Introduce yourself, right? Like, hey, I'm Kathy. And then you can go into your story there. Like, what a concept, right? Again, it's being authentic. And then you want to show them that you understand where they're at right now, but also poke into the future and show them what's possible. And I don't mean that from like, like a scammy swarm, like used carsman, nothing against used car. Like that's just that kind of, it's like showing them what's possible in an authentic way. Right. Yeah. So again, you're speaking to that aspiring podcaster and letting them know what's possible to have this amazing podcast, and you get to reach people all over the world and have a major impact, and et cetera, et cetera. So that's where you're sharing your story, and then you just authentically give them a call to action. Like, what do you want them to do? Like, click this link, or, click the learn more button below to grab your free checklist. So many, it sounds so obvious, but most people forget to put a call back. You got to tell people what you want them to do. And so, yeah, so absolutely. You're putting some structure to what you're writing in the ad.
Right. So speaking of the call to action.
Yep.
You have said a couple times you've been calling back to a lead magnet.
Yeah.
If you had to choose where to spend money on Facebook ads, and let's say you're just starting and you want to be conservative about it, would you say run ads to grow to your list with an opt-in so that you could then email this list an offer or whatever? Or would you say run ads to a one-time masterclass / webinar or a 5-day sprint, 5-day challenge? What would you say, if you're just starting, is the best use of that time and money?
And we have a small budget.
Yeah.
Here's what I would do. I would run some video ad campaigns. Again, grab your phone, short videos, like 2 minutes and under. Like even a 2 minutes is a long video on like, we know, like, what's our attention span.
Right.
So short videos, I would create a couple of different videos where we're speaking to different quote unquote hooks or angles. Like, you could say, again, going back to the like, want to start a podcast, but have no idea where to start. And then you can talk about it real quick, but then you can begin that conversation on the video with a different angle, if you will, and maybe create like 2 to 3 different videos. And we're going to talk about this in just a second, but you want to do video view campaigns. That's the objective. And then we're getting a little technical, you want to optimize for through play. It's spelled THRU play. And what that is on Facebook, it's a 15-second view. So Facebook is going to show your Facebook, you want Facebook to show that video ad to people who are most likely to watch at least 15 seconds within your target audience. What this is doing, number one, is you get to create short videos and you get to test different hooks, if you will, like what's resonating most, right? Looking to start a podcast, but have no idea where to start. Like that could be one. And then you have a couple more. You get to test your messaging, if you will, in the video with you speaking. It's a great way for you to connect. We connect on video much better, obviously, than a picture. And then you get to test target audiences. So if we're targeting, whatever target audience that we come up with, well, is that good? Or did that work or not? Now, what I mean by work is, and this is where I'd start with this, like brand new, is test some different videos, but it's going to cost you literally pennies for a video view. Like you might pay 4 cents for a video view, right? And then at the end of that video, you could absolutely have a call to action over to your lead magnet. But the whole point of the video is to test your messaging and test your hook, if you will, and then B, test your different target audiences. Because you might dial in on like, ooh, this hooked really well. This hook worked really well. And whatever, targeting Seth Godin, that was great. Okay. But this target audience over here didn't work very well. Now that we've done, and we can do that literally spending a couple dollars a day. We're talking like $1 or $2 a day. So budget right there, not very high.
Right.
Then once we've done our testing through that, then I would say move into building our audience through lead magnet. Okay.
Yeah.
If you're really good with a webinar, if you're doing webinars and you feel comfortable putting it together, I love building your list through a webinar. That's what I did for years. That's how I, like, for the first 5 years of the business, that's all I did was I ran ads to webinars, and that's how I built my list.
And what was your offer at the end of the webinar?
Purchase my program.
And was it like 100, 200, 500? How much did it cost at the time?
The first year for my offer?
Yeah.
Yeah. The first year for that first offer was $497 for the program, like go through it yourself. And then I offered a $997 VIP, quote unquote, where they got some coaching from me. But then, yeah, and I've had all kinds of, I've done beta offers where it was like, I think it was like $247 or something. And I was going to be selling it for like $497. So yeah, whenever you do you're testing, right? This is one of the biggest, I don't know if you talk about this, Kathy, but like, guys, if you're creating a course, for example, please do not create the course until you sell it. I just had somebody join Accelerator and I had him on the podcast. He wasted $5,000. He hired a special developer to build out his website platform, his course platform. And he spent, I think it was like 9 months putting the course together. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to put it out there. And nobody bought. Nobody. And it was a $197 offer. And then finally he's like, well, I'm just going to cut it in half to sell it for $97. And I'm going to offer it to my friends. He had one buddy purchase it. He wasted 9 months. He wasted $5,000 building this thing out, and he made $97 selling it to a buddy.
Yeah, that's so devastating.
Flip that.
Yeah. That's why I always say, like, don't go shoot all these modules. Like, start beta testing. Do like a 3-hour workshop. See what people liked, what they didn't like. Ask them what next questions they have. Make sure that you're on the right track. You might start out teaching podcasting and realize people really just want vocal coaching, or who knows, I'm making it up, but there's so much data that we just skip over and we can prevent. So this is so good. You guys, if you have questions, you can put them in the chat. Maybe Rick will be nice enough to answer a few, but while you're doing that, I want to ask you a question. I want to zoom out from Facebook ads for a second, because we just went it was so good and people were actually like loving the details. But I want to zoom out for a second, because what you said at the end, I think, is even more compelling than how brilliant you are about Facebook ads, which is, and then we'll come back to whatever your questions are. Okay, guys, I'll take a few. But when you said at the end, what I really want to do is help people make a bigger impact and make more money working less, right? Having more quality of life. What would you say is one of the most essential ways then to structure your business so that you have more daylight with your doing what you really want?
Work backwards. So I had, just to give you like a concrete example. So one of my coaching students, she said, and she was already successful, right? She already had, when she came to me, she already had $1 million business. But she's got how many kids? She had 5 kids. She had a ton going on, right? She said, I want to scale my business, but I want to work no more than 20 hours a week. Okay. So it's like, okay, awesome. We have a place all right. So it's like, all right, where do you want to get to in revenue? And you have 20 hours a week. We work backwards from that. So it's talk about like being ruthless with your time. It's like, what are the things that have to be done within the parameters of the time constraints that we have? And I don't even want to call them time constraints because, again, mindset thing, we often say, I only have this much time during the week. Well, what if we looked at it like it's exactly enough time in order to build whatever it is I want to build, right? Because the whole like, oh, you have to work 16 hours a day in order to do that, in order to be successful, we can list off a million examples of people who are doing that and are not making any money in their business. So it's just not true. And so I would start there. What is the goal that you want to get to? Like, what's the revenue goal? And then you can look at, okay, what's like a price point that somebody might be selling here?
Well, most of them are really just starting, but maybe
Sure.
it's like, could be 97,
Okay.
397, 500, maybe most, something like that.
Okay. So I just see Katie, it says $497 a month.
That's great, Katie. I love that. None of you charge enough. That's the bottom line.
Absolutely. You want to make more money, guys? Charge more. Plain and simple. We always undercharge. So $497 a month in coaching, amazing. Okay, well, what if our goal is whatever, 100 or let's say $100,000 or $50,000. We just work backwards, like, all right, $497 a month is 500 bucks a month times 12, that's $6,000 a year, right? From one client. How many clients do I need to make or do I need to have in order to hit 50K or 100K? So it's all numbers and you just work backwards from there. And then we say, okay, again, how many hours do you have to work? Or do you have allotted to run your business and grow your business? Okay, we have 20 hours, we have 25 hours, we have whatever it is, 30 hours. Great. I know my numbers. Now let's look at, all right, what do I need to do to quote unquote get the word out about me? So i.e. marketing. How do I attract my audience? So podcast, videos, Facebook Live, whatever it is that we're doing, we want a consistent strategy to be attracting our audience. So it's like you're prioritizing within that time that you have to build the business up to the point, because now you have numbers, you have concrete numbers that quote unquote need to happen if you want to achieve your goal, right? But then it's about, all right, everything else, the video edit, like creating images in Canva. These are all things that we can literally put on Fiverr, for example, and spend a few bucks and get somebody else to do. And does that make sense? Because I want to add one more thing to that.
Go ahead.
We often talk all about our goal, right? Like, oh, I want to hit whatever it is, $40,000 or $50,000, or I just had a call. I welcomed somebody new into Accelerator yesterday, and she said, I want to retire my husband. I've had lots of those people. I love that goal as a why. I love it. All right, cool. So what does that look like? How much needs to happen? How much do you need to make in order for that to happen? And so what we can do with that is say, let's just say my goal is I want to make $100,000. Well, what happens is, number one, you gotta have where's that number coming from, right? Like, is an actual real number based on the lifestyle that you want to create and what your monthly expenses are as a family and that type of stuff? If it is, hopefully it is. Most people pull that number, we're at like just, 100 grand or whatever. No, have a real true reason behind it, because then you can start to put that together, meaning working backwards from there, the amount of time. But guys, if you can reframe your goal setting of it's a goal, great, we have the end goal in mind. If we don't hit the goal, it's not because you're a failure. It's not because you don't know what you're doing. It's not because of any of that. If you think about it, like, who am I becoming as the CEO of my business? You're all CEOs of your business. Who am I becoming as the CEO in the process of hitting that goal? Because I guarantee if you don't hit the $100,000 or whatever the goal is, you've learned a hell of a lot along the way, right? I don't even know if I answered your question, Kathy.
No, it's
Because
it's all so good. I think of all those things, I'm just curious for you, because you know, you said podcasting, you know, creating stuff on Canva, putting things out there. Which one for you, which activity has led you to the most in terms of revenue generating?
Can you see this? Right here, podcast, 100%. So I've been podcasting now for 7 years. This one, Art of Online Business, used to be called The Art of Paid Traffic. Started that 5 years ago, and we don't do Kathy Heller numbers on the podcast, but we do pretty well, right? But I don't know the percentage, but I can tell you very, very without hesitation that at least 80 to 90% of my paying customers are listeners of the podcast, hands down. So in that case, I look at it as an umbrella. Podcast sits at the top of the business, and then everything else filters down from there, meaning paying customers and stuff like that. It makes it very clear on what I need to be focusing on in the business. Creating an amazing podcast, growing the podcast, and then fulfilling on what it is that I'm selling.
So that's awesome, because we talked about, I'm obviously a huge proponent of podcasting, you know, went from 0 to 20 million downloads in 4 years, and totally gave me opportunities I never even dreamed were even on the table. So we talked about that here. So everybody's already got, I've brainwashed them. So when you have a podcast, connect the dots for them. You have a podcast. How does that podcast lead to your offer? Do you use the podcast to grow your list, which then you tell your list about your offer? Or do you use the podcast as set up? At this point, there's no way you have like a Calendly link, but what do you do? What would you advise people to do with their podcast? So
people do not take me up on my calls to action on my podcast from a lead magnet perspective, right? Like my call to action, for example, like go apply for Accelerator. People do that. However, it's the long game that we're playing. Like I have people that have been listening for years that are finally to the point where they apply for this program, right? But it's like, you know, and the other thing too, just a caveat on that, for those of you guys who are podcasting, I hope you don't feel like, because I do too, don't feel like that you're mentioning whatever you want people to do, whatever the call to action is, too much. And what I mean by that, especially if you're batching episodes, like let's say you do 4 episodes in a day, it's going to feel like you're overselling, quote unquote, your call to action. But we have to remember that, number one, we just created 4 episodes, not like we didn't have 4 calls to action within 1 episode. And then again, not everybody's going to listen to every episode you put out. So I had people apply for the program and they said, been waiting for it to open. And it's been, you know, it's open enrollment, right? They were like, I didn't even know it was open. I heard you say on the podcast, and I was like, oh, you mean if I mention it, more people actually do it? Yes, crazy concept, right? And so, yeah, it's consistency. Like if I don't release a show on when I do 2 Wednesdays and Fridays, like if I miss a Wednesday or Friday, I'm going to hear it from people, and like they know. So consistency is number 1. But then, yeah, have a call to action to, you know, go download something, or, you know, go to my free Facebook group, or, you know, hey, I have a free training series coming up, or whatever it is. Yeah, put the call to action in there. And another great thing to do is, like, if you have an audience, like you can be an affiliate for, like, you know, ClickUp, for example, project management tool. I love it. So like that could be my quote sponsor, and ClickUp isn't sponsoring the podcast, but like it's my affiliate link. So I could talk about it authentically and say, hey, go check this out. So there's lots of different things you can do there, but definitely have a call to action towards something that you've got going on in your business. Where do you want people to go based on what you're doing in the business?
So good. Isn't this so fun, guys? Look, you're right on track. Tell us where we can find your podcast, where we can find your Accelerator information, all the things.
Thank you. I appreciate yeah, it's called The Art of Online Business. I'm on all the podcast platforms. We publish Wednesdays and Fridays. Fridays are my quote unquote quick tip episodes. They're generally about 20 minutes and under. So please subscribe to the show there. That'd be amazing. Instagram at Rick Mulready, and then rickmulready.com is my website. By the way, when you see that website, literally that website is from November. That's like 5 months ago, and I love it. But 7 years into the business, then I have a nice website. So
amazing. You are delightful. This was so helpful.
Thank you,
Thank
Kathy.
you for giving us so much extra time. Didn't realize it was go this long, but you were just
You
so
bet.
generous. Thank you so
bet.
much.
I
Thank you
appreciate
guys.
it.
You know what I want you guys to do? Take a screenshot of this. If you're whether you're listening to the podcast or you're here with us right now, take a screenshot and tag Rick at Rick Mulready on Instagram. And you can tag me too. If you tag me, I'll repost it. But give him some love. Let him know if there's something about this conversation that stood out to you, and let people know about it. It's always a nice way to let people know you appreciated it.
Yeah. If you guys have questions, shoot me a DM on Instagram. Might take me a couple of days to get back to you, but feel free to shoot me any questions there. Yeah.
Of course. It's very like you to say that. Well, thank you so much. This was
Absolutely.
unbelievably generous of you.
Thanks, guys.
Everybody.